I'm going to be honest, things got away from me a little bit. This was supposed to be just 2 ways to make a Paloma, and we'd look at my roommate's body a little bit, have some fun. Things got, this is a trailer. If this vibe is not this is supposed to be like 2 minutes long, don't watch this. No, do not encourage whatever this is. Just, oh my.
God is a waifu.
This is the portion of my psychotic break where we learn science.
Still eat ass if you wanted to.
Grapefruit is relevant because we want a predictable model of what these curves are going to look like.
Drink Palomas. I need to take a fucking shower. Jesus Christ.
Before we get into the cocktail making, we're going to need grapefruits. And I've been getting this question a lot recently from my nighttime paralysis demon: where do I get quality grapefruits? All the fruit at my local grocery store is being attacked by CrossFit moms I'm too scared of to approach. And my answer is typically a market that uses circus music to enhance the grapefruit growth process, like so. Now you can see by implementing a growth method such as this, you get a yield of beautiful citrus, like those on the left-hand side of this blood lake. That's the reason that our paddle boat paddling pal, Paddled Paul, is clearly more interested in the leftmost fruits. It's also crucially important to note here that the image on the right is from a grapefruit pizza recipe made by Ocean Spray. On the bright side, if you are currently jobless, Ocean Spray does hire recipe writers who have neither seen nor tasted food. But all jokes aside, I really do value my credibility, so I also wanted to take this time to include a recent study from Harvard University that confirms my personal findings. As you can clearly see here, the successful growth of grapefruit is directly related to the presence of circus music. And then what's really fascinating is a follow-up and completely separate study earlier this year added additional evidence by demonstrating the decline of citrus growth in the absence of circus music. Now armed with all the necessary information, let's go ahead and whip up a classic Paloma. The drink is often overshadowed by its big sister, the margarita, but the margarita is much like a one-night stand, while the Paloma is more of an Elastigirl fleshlight. The former leaving you with an irritating problem the following morning that won't seem to go away, while the latter allows you to awake refreshed and covered in your own blissful private shame. Don't mind my roommate prepping ingredients in the background, you haven't missed anything yet. The Paloma is simply 3 ingredients: tequila, lime juice, and grapefruit soda. I prefer a Blanco tequila. I'm using El Tesoro, as I greatly enjoy the robust citrus flavor and slightly floral aroma, almost a subtle waft of gardenia on the nose. It's also able to hold up to the almost saccharine nature of our grapefruit soda, as the cane sugar definitely packs a punch. So we've just added 0.75 ounces of fresh squeezed lime juice to our glass, followed by the 2 ounces of tequila we're pouring in now. And we don't need to shake this cocktail, even though there's citrus, because we don't care about the 4 reasons for shaking: creating texture, mixing, chilling, or diluting. This cocktail has what's called a lengthener, so grapefruit soda in this case, but it could also be something like ginger beer, which is at least equal in volume to the base spirit. So for us, that's going to be 3 ounces of grapefruit soda, which is going to add our texture and mixing with the carbonation, while the ice in the glass will dilute and chill. Now I just had to think of someone to taste my beautiful Paloma creation. I couldn't simply test it myself, as I'm biased and a functioning alcoholic, because
You treat an outside wound with rubbing alcohol, you treat an inside wound with drinking alcohol. Science.
So I asked my roommate to give it a taste, but he refused as he's preparing for his bi-weekly prostate exam, or as he calls it, Jesus Christ, leave me alone, I need to study for this test. Then I texted my sister, as I had seen a dead rat bobbing up and down in the water that morning along my running route. I told her I was going to try and find him again, the clearest possible cry for help I could muster. Sadly, George, the river rat, and my hopes of receiving professional psychiatric help were gone by the time I arrived. Undeterred, I scoured the city, looking for someone, something, to taste my fresh Paloma.
Baby rabbit, would you like a Paloma?
I was hopeful the bunny would indulge in my expertly crafted libation. I assumed she was familiar with the literature on bone regeneration in the rabbit's sinus, published in the Maxillofacial Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery Journal. Unfortunately, the study was behind a paywall for the rabbit, and she didn't seem to be aware of the present benefits.
Here you go. Get some citrus, vitamin C. Oh, okay. When you're ready.
Unlike my Boy Scout leader at camp when I was 7, I understood that this rabbit wasn't ready for such a commitment. I continued on, still determined to find a pal with whom I could share my citrus and tequila beverage.
Intravenous drug needle behind my apartment. Would you like a Paloma?
Alright, I'm now going to over-explain this comment/joke to get rid of the final 3 people still hanging on and watching this video. Alright, this is the portion of my psychotic break where we learn science. So, was the joke about intravenous drug use in grapefruit distasteful? No. It was scientifically relevant, humorous, even, if you have that sort of background, maybe. We'll see after this, because you will have this background. I'm going to teach you this background. Okay, so we're going to do some science now. Bioavailability, grapefruit juice, why we care, how it's relevant to palomas. So let's take a look at this bad boy real quick. What's relevant here for us? Bioavailability. I already circled grapefruit juice because of forethought. And in this study, they refer to it as GFJ because they got some cool abbreviations. And then the rest of this is just like oral cancer drugs in adults, which have very low oral bioavailability. So, what are we talking about? What's going on? Why does grapefruit matter? We're gonna teach you about it. And this might be a little... Gosh, I don't want to say it'll be confusing at first. It's going to seem pretty irrelevant right at the start, but I swear I'm going to swing it down to you to a fun, interesting, great place to be in the scientific community, which is just a bunch of really bad analogies that people would crucify me for. Okay, so to start off, why do we care about grapefruit juice? Well, because I don't have a pen tool, so I had to draw these previously because it was taking like a month. These are both furanocoumarins. Yeah, looks pretty right. So these bad boys are furanocoumarins, which are phytonutrients that are found in grapefruits. And so phytonutrients, that just means like a natural defense mechanism sort of thing. Primarily, we think that these help with fungi in grapefruits, and that's why we're concerned with them, because we need grapefruits for our palomas. And so why do we care about these furanocoumarins, right? Specifically, this is bergamotin and dihydroxybergamotin. But we're not really going to be using those. From now on, this is just going to be, all of this is just grapefruit. Okay? So grapefruit has furanocoumarins, bergamotin, dihydroxybergamotin, but we're just going to refer to that as grapefruits. So why does grapefruit affect bioavailability? Why does it affect drug use? So the first thing we have to do is understand what bioavailability is. So bioavailability is actually pretty simple. It's just, it's a percentage, and it is how much of a drug reaches systemic circulation, right? So if you take a drug, a bunch of it is broken down by your body before it gets into circulation, before it gets into your bloodstream and like out of the hepatic portal system or something. So the amount of the drug that's actually affecting you is the systemic circulation, which is the bioavailability. And there's actually an equation for this, which might be helpful or might be more confusing. I don't know, especially because I'm going to be drawing it with a mouse. All right, so it's always represented as a percentage, which I believe that I mentioned. So 100 times. And then we're going to have AUC, which is just simply the area under the curve. And this will make more sense. I'm going to draw it over here in a second. So it's the area under the curve, and this is a PO, that just means oral, times the dosage of the IV, and the area under the curve of the IV, and then the dosage of the oral. So what does this look like? What is area under the curve? It's basically a super straightforward and uncreative way to represent things. You literally have, so here is time. What is up with this? Okay. Here's time, and then this would be like the drug concentration in the plasma. So we'll just say drug, and then let's see, like systemic circulation. Okay, so how much of the drug is affecting you, basically. And we'll say that, so intravenous, since it is 100%, is immediately affecting you, and then we'll go down over time. So as soon as you are administered through intravenous means a drug, bam, you're right at 100, and then it kind of comes down and curves off like this over time. As opposed to if you take an oral drug, so this will be IV, and if you take an oral drug, that is not going to be all the way up here. That's actually going to take some time to activate and then go down. And this can move depending on the efficacy of the drug. But when you take it orally, there's going to be this slow absorption period, right? And some drugs are much lower than this even with first pass effect. But slow absorption period, and then when you see it start to go down, that's typically the excretion period. So you're literally like dumping it out. It's getting processed by the liver. It's no longer going to be doing its thing. And the importance of this is just to show what this AUC means. What is AUC? Area under the curve. This is the curve. It's just the area underneath this curve. And so why is grapefruit relevant? Well, grapefruit is relevant because we want a predictable model of what these curves are going to look like. Right, so drug companies want a predictable model of what this curve is going to look like. So it basically knows how to calculate dosage to recommend for patients. And the problem is grapefruit, for reasons we'll explain in just a moment, messes up this curve. If you have grapefruit in your system, this little blue curve, I'll make it a little darker blue, can actually go way higher. Okay? And the reason for this is because of dun, 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 let's draw something new. We're going to skip right to the small intestine. Okay? So there are obviously other facets of your digestive tract that are involved in metabolizing drugs, but primarily grapefruit, what we're concerned with, is happening in the small intestine, because that is where cytochrome P45. Oh my goodness, you're killing me. You know what? The select tool is going to be easier. There we go. Cytochrome P450. Okay. So, what's happening in the small intestine? Okay, so the small intestine basically has like a million little doors. And these million little doors for absorption are on these things called villi. So these villi are like little fingers. Mine are too chubby. These should be thinner. Little fingers that are all over the small intestine. And then on those fingers, there's even tinier little epithelial cells that have their own little fingers, which are microvilli. So one of these bad boys is a villi, and then on their cells, they have even more little fuzzes, more little hairs. Those are the microvilli, right? And so there are other things here too, like if the bottom of these is the crypt, and that's where like the stem cells are, but that's not super relevant for what we're talking about. So let's imagine that this is kind of the bloodstream over here, right? This is where the drug you're taking wants to get. And so this is a hot place. This is Club Puss, okay? Club Puss. And the thing that wants to get into Club Puss is the drug you just took, right? So let's say here are little pills, and now they're coming on into the small intestine. And think of these pills as, because your body doesn't know inherently what medicine is, right? It has no interest in like, oh, more of that. That's clearly helping us. It's just a chemical that it's going to process like it processes everything else, right? It doesn't know that this is something that's trying to help you. It reacts to it in a neutral way. And let's say, just for instance, sake of understanding, that all of these drugs are guys from DCI, right? So these are DCI. These are guys from DCI, and they all have roofies with them that they want to take in to mess with the co-eds at Club Puss, okay? So here are these guys, and here's a little roofie bag. Okay. So, DCI's coming in, and they all want to get into Club Puss, because they got these roofies, they want to roofie those sweet co-eds. And they're trying to get into all these little doors that exist along the small intestine, right? So they all got their little door picked out, and they're trying to get up in there. But the problem is, big boy cytochrome P450, we'll just call them 4 for short, there are a bunch of them floating around here. And they like to break things down a little bit before they pass through the small intestine, right? Before they get into the hepatic portal system. So what happens is they're basically trying to get rid of any nasty sort of compounds, start metabolizing things, start breaking things down. And so they say, all right, you guys can get into Club Puss. You got to give me those roofies first. Okay? So they start knocking these damn roofies off all these dekai guys, right? And so now when they go in, they are de-roofied, right? And now they're just standing awkwardly, I don't know, talking about stocks. And the issue is our grapefruit, right? So what happens with the grapefruit? The issue with the grapefruit is that those furocoumarins come on in, and so these are like the new Greek pledges, right? So these new Greek pledges come on in, and they're doing something like they're taking a dump on the car of the cytochromes, or they're putting their nuts in an easy bake oven, making a bunch of smoke, and so they're kind of being like little distractors. And so now, these guys have to go deal with the grapefruits. And what that means is they're not guarding their little doors, right? And so now their little doors are kind of open. And the dekai guys with their roofies, they can just get on in, right? Because they're not being stopped. So the issue here is that if these dekai guys were good drugs, the drug company knows that most of them are going to get snuffed out by this cytochrome P450, right? It's going to get rid of most of them, so you have to provide a certain amount of a certain dosage accounting for that, right? If you know that like 80% are going to be taken out, then you have to account for that. But the issue is that when all these grapefruits get up in here, then way more than accounted for are getting into Club Puss. And then Club Puss is a total sausage fest, right? Filled with roofies. And that is essentially, can I zoom out here a little bit? Oh, that's way too much. Okay. That is essentially why it was a good joke. The intravenous drug use. Grapefruit. So I would like to end with this. I think that I don't know much about anything, and I don't know anything about much, but if you want to enhance a drug experience, let's say, for instance, you're interested in ingesting crack, drink a fucking Paloma first. Get that grapefruit in there, get nice and saturated with the grapefruit, and then eat some crack.
If crack cocaine is what you want, then crack cocaine is what we are going to get.
All right, now, coming up, very excited about this, we're going to be making my version of the Paloma. I'm even going to be in the corner of the screen this time, overlaid, because I just learned how to do that by accident. So now that is something that's going to be happening. I wasn't overlaid previously. When you saw me in the corner before, that was just a screen recording of paint. You can see what level of technical sophistication we're at. So I'm going to be in this next one teaching you my version of the Paloma. I didn't realize how long he did pull-ups for, so we're just going to write it out for a second here. Alright, so for my fun take on this, you are going to need everything you see in front of you. Reposado tequila, Aperol, a grapefruit soda. I believe this is Fever Tree Pink Grapefruit. It will not work as well if you just use something like a mineral water. And then lime juice, as well as rosemary. So let's break down quickly why I chose some of those ingredients. Because this is supposed to be a fun riff on the original Paloma. It's not supposed to be an upgrade or a replacement for the original. Because the original uses a Blanco tequila, which is phenomenal. And I love Blanco if I'm drinking tequila just straight. Typically, I prefer Blanco. It is so bright and citrusy and crisp, and the agave comes through nicely, and it's like just so in your face you're drinking tequila. It's fantastic. But if I want to do something that is kind of playing off the bitter notes of grapefruit as opposed to the citrusy notes, then I want something like a reposado. This is slightly, I don't want to say muted, but it's like the dial's turned down a little bit. It's turned down. It is almost getting into that realm of light bakery tastes, kind of like vanilla-y, caramely, and then some of the lighter woods like oak. So that is what I want to use for the tequila. And then again, I mentioned before, just briefly, that this is playing a little bit on not as much the citrusy portion of grapefruit, but that slight bitterness, kind of the bit of the pith flavor that you get. And for that, I want to complement it with Aperol. Okay, so you might be thinking to yourself, we're talking about bitter as opposed to Aperol. Why wouldn't you be turning to something like Campari? Okay, because Campari is kind of like an orange rind spit in your mouth and then ran around your apartment and banged all your pots and pans together. Because it's like, you know, okay, you're here. I know you're here. Sometimes this is fun, but it's a little much right now. And that's basically what Campari would do to this drink. It would just take it over the top in terms of bitterness, and it's fantastic when it is appropriate. It just doesn't work in this drink. And also, I wanted to let Aperol shine a little bit in a beverage that isn't just a spritz, because I think that's mostly what it's kind of known for now, but it plays beautifully with other things, where it adds the little bit of sweetness that we want without going crazy, and a little bit of bitterness we want, again, to keep everything balanced and play on those secondary notes of grapefruit. Also then, I love herbs in cocktails. I think they are absolutely fantastic. I only grow 4 of them on my 3 various windowsills around here, and yeah, rosemary is one of them. So this is I have rosemary and Thai basil in this little planter. The Thai basil seems to grow the best out of everything in these conditions, but the rosemary is, oh gosh, that's so good. It's just fantastic, and it is a beautiful complement to grapefruit. Excuse me, so we're going to be muddling that in there as well. And while this cocktail doesn't use any actual raw juice from a grapefruit, we're going to be having this Fever Tree Sparkling Pink Grapefruit, which has plenty of grapefruit in it, as opposed to something just like mineral water combined with grapefruit juice, because I feel that kind of waters things down a little bit.
Drink Palomas. I need to take a fucking shower. Jesus Christ.